The rain had come down in a slow, deliberate drizzle that morning. Not enough to warrant an umbrella, but just enough to make the world feel damp, slick, and uncertain. Evelyn Harper stood at the edge of the driveway, staring at her husband's SUV as though it had just whispered something vile. She hadn't meant to get in the car. She was only grabbing the umbrella she thought she'd left behind the night before. But when her hand slipped into the glove box, instead of fabric, her fingers landed on something rubbery and slick. A tube. Personal lubricant. Half used. Familiar enough to be recognizable. Foreign enough to chill her spine. She stared at it, unmoving, in that odd, surreal second where betrayal takes shape but hasn't yet fully formed. Victor hadn't touched her in almost 2 years. Not since the sciatica, or the thyroid treatments, or whatever vague ailment he'd most recently blamed. Evelyn had stopped counting excuses. Instead, she counted eggs, pastry shells, hotel invoices, growth reports for Cinnamon Hill. Her life had narrowed into a tight, fragrant rhythm of sugar and deadlines. But now, this. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She was 63 years old. Tears didn't come easily anymore, especially not over men. Instead, she slid the tube into her apron pocket and walked slowly back into the house, the rubbery thing cold against her thigh. Later, once Victor had left for one of his regional franchise meetings, Evelyn reached into the repair drawer in the bakery's storeroom, right behind the old cash register drawer full of broken teaspoons and flour scoops. She pulled out a small tube of industrial-grade epoxy, the kind used to seal broken tile in the kitchen. Thick, clear, vicious. She emptied the original tube, washed and dried it like she was prepping a cake mold, and slowly filled it with glue. The irony was poetic. She didn't know what she expected to happen. A symbolic gesture, perhaps. A reversal of roles. A minor chaos to shake the order of things. Once it was sealed and wiped clean, she placed it exactly where she had found the original, in the glove box, next to an expired insurance card and a bag of mints. The next hours passed slowly. Cinnamon Hill bustled with customers, the usual crowd of local lawyers, moms with toddlers, and retired couples pretending they were here for the pastries and not for gossip. Evelyn served her famous cinnamon fig tarts with a strained smile, but beneath the surface, she was spiraling. That night, Victor returned home late, nearly 11 p.m. His shirt collar was rumpled, his cheeks red from either drink or exertion. He reeked of his usual cologne. But under that was something else, a faint scent, floral, expensive, too delicate to be an accident. It reminded her of a perfume from a boutique she'd once passed in Venice, something oceanic and sharp. Not the lavender vanilla she wore, not even close. Victor barely looked at her. He mumbled a vague greeting, set his phone face down on the kitchen counter, and trudged upstairs. Evelyn followed him with her eyes, not her feet. There was no kiss, no glance. Just a heavy silence and the creak of the stairs beneath his weight. By the time she climbed up an hour later, he was snoring. The house smelled of his presence, aftershave, scotch, and the lingering floral note that now burned her throat. She sat at her writing desk in the bedroom and opened her laptop, unable to sleep. Her hands moved without thinking, instinct overriding reason. Victor's old laptop still sat in the guest room, mostly untouched. He said he hated email. Claimed texting was too millennial. He liked to keep it real, whatever that meant. But the laptop was still connected to the home Wi-Fi, and when Evelyn opened it, her fingers hesitated over the mousepad. The browser loaded slowly. She opened the email app. There it was. One message, unread. Subject, last night. From mflora789 at... a mess of numbers and letters. She clicked. You smell like the ocean I never dared swim in. Last night was worth every risk. Same time next week? There was no name, no signature. But Evelyn didn't need one. She could almost see the perfume's bottle, blue glass, gold trim. A tiny island of seduction nestled in someone else's bathroom drawer. She sat in the dark, frozen. For a long moment, all she heard was Victor's snoring in the next room, steady and unbothered. She wanted to scream, to shake him awake, to pour boiling sugar on his chest. But instead, She simply whispered one word to the darkness. Marissa. The next morning, Evelyn moved like a ghost through her own home, her footsteps noiseless on the polished wood floor. She poured coffee but didn't drink it, fried 2 eggs but didn't eat them. Her stomach turned every time she thought of that email, that scent, that damn tube. Victor came down the stairs, freshly showered and humming as if nothing had happened. He wore his charcoal suit, the one he always saved for serious meetings, and checked his reflection in the hallway mirror with the attention of a man about to go on a first date, not a business errand. Evelyn had watched him for years. She knew all his versions. This one, the slick, careful Victor, was not for her benefit. "Big meeting today?" she asked, keeping her voice neutral. He barely glanced at her. "Yeah, up in Sacramento. Some franchisee wants to buy in big. Could be a real game changer for Cinnamon Hill." "Sacramento," she echoed, then forced a smile. "Drive safe." He grunted, grabbed his keys and phone, now screen side down always, and was gone. The door shut behind him like a punctuation mark. Evelyn stood there for a moment, staring at the space he'd just occupied. Her fingers twitched. She went straight to the laundry basket and pulled his trousers from yesterday out from beneath a towel. Methodically, she checked the pockets. Coins, a receipt. She unfolded it carefully, and her heart sank. Lemaire Steakhouse, Santa Barbara. Table for 2. Bottle of 2009 Chateau Margaux Cabernet Sauvignon. Filet mignon, lobster ravioli, dark chocolate soufflé. Santa Barbara, not Sacramento. She closed her eyes, inhaled sharply. That was their wine, her wine. The same label Victor had given her for their 10th anniversary, back when things were still warm. Honest, or at least they had seemed that way. She placed the receipt on the counter and took a photo with her phone, her hands as steady as stone. Evelyn Harper had spent her life handling delicate pastry shells and boiling caramel. She knew how to control her hands, even when her heart was breaking. She stared at the picture. Santa Barbara was 3 hours in the opposite direction from where Victor claimed to be, and Lemaire. She remembered seeing it on a food segment once, one of those velvet rope places where men took mistresses, not business partners. The truth was unfurling now, like a sourdough that had risen too long. She wasn't just suspicious anymore. She knew. She needed more. By noon, Evelyn had made up her mind. She called Mrs. Beatrice Langley, her neighbor and oldest friend, who answered on the second ring. "Evelyn?" Beatrice sounded surprised. "You sound odd. Is everything all right?" "Do you still have the number of that private investigator, the one who helped your niece with that cheating husband?" Beatrice was silent for a beat. "Frank Delgado?" "Yes, him." Beatrice hesitated again. "He's a bit unconventional, but discreet. Why? Evelyn, I just need the number." Beatrice exhaled slowly. "I'll text it to you." 10 minutes later, Evelyn received a message. "Frank Delgado, 415-XXXXXX. Tell him Beatrice sent you." She didn't call immediately. Instead, she looked around her kitchen, the warm yellow tiles, the vintage spice rack, the morning sunlight falling across the bowl of oranges on the counter. Everything felt unreal, like she was playing a part in a film someone else had written. She sat at the table and stared at the receipt again. Her phone vibrated, a message from Victor. "Meeting going long, don't wait up tonight." Evelyn didn't reply. She opened her phone's recorder and dictated a simple voice memo. Victor Harper lied about being in Sacramento. Receipt confirms Santa Barbara. Email confirms infidelity. Suspect, Marissa Chen Harper. Motive unclear. Further evidence required. It felt ridiculous, like she was auditioning for a true crime podcast, but it gave her a kind of control. She saved the file. Then she dialed Frank Delgado. A gravelly voice answered after 3 rings. "Delgado." "Mr. Delgado, my name is Evelyn Harper. Beatrice Langley gave me your number." "She mentioned you might call." He sounded tired or drunk or both. "You think your husband's screwing someone?" "I know he is," she said flatly. but I don't know who else is involved or what they're after." There was a long pause. Then Frank's voice came back, a little more sober. "You got photos? Anything weird? Bank transfers? Receipts?" "I have enough to start." "Then let's meet tomorrow. I work fast." She hung up and stared out the window. A pigeon landed on the balcony railing and pecked at a loose nail, persistent and blind. Evelyn whispered, more to herself than anyone, "Let's see how fast you really are, Victor." Frank Delgado was not what Evelyn expected. He showed up to the cafe in a faded bomber jacket, worn jeans, and a weathered expression that suggested he'd seen too much and forgotten even more. He moved like someone who avoided eye contact by default. But when his eyes finally did meet hers, Evelyn felt a strange shiver, not of fear, but of recognition. Frank looked like a man who understood betrayal on a cellular level. "You Evelyn?" he asked, sipping from a cracked thermos that definitely didn't hold coffee. She nodded. "You're late." He grunted. "You're lucky I showed up at all. I usually don't do domestic cases anymore. Too messy. But Beatrice said you were the kind that doesn't cry at the table." Evelyn slid the small manila envelope across to him without a word. Inside were the photos, the email screenshot, the Lemaire receipt, and a printout of the lubricant packaging, just for good measure. Frank flipped through them, squinting. Santa Barbara. That's money. And this email, very poetic. Guy's a romantic when he cheats. That's rare. "I want to know who she is. I have a suspicion," Evelyn said, folding her hands in her lap. "But I need proof. Hard, visual proof." "You got a name?" "Marissa Chen Harper." Frank looked up sharply. "Your daughter-in-law?" She gave a tight nod. He whistled low. "That's cold. You sure?" "I'm not sure of anything anymore, but I know that perfume didn't come from Target." Frank leaned back. "I'll tail him. Phones are trickier now with privacy laws, but if he's careless, we'll catch him." "He's always careless when he thinks he's smarter than everyone else." Frank gave a rare smile, a crack in the granite. "He's a man. He'll mess up eventually." The next day, Evelyn kept her routine the same. She opened Cinnamon Hill before dawn, served her regulars with practiced grace, and ignored the sympathetic looks from Mrs. Langley, who had clearly picked up on the tension humming through Evelyn's bones. Mid-morning, a message came through. "Frank, got something. Check your email in 10. Brace yourself." Evelyn locked herself in the tiny office behind the bakery's freezer and opened the email. There were 3 photographs attached. No captions, no warnings, just truth. The first photo showed Victor, clear as day, outside a boutique hotel off Pacific Avenue in Santa Barbara. He was holding the door open for a woman in a black trench coat and oversized sunglasses. Her face was tilted downward, but Evelyn would know that jawline anywhere. Marissa. The second photo captured them walking through the lobby, hand in hand. Not the kind of hand-holding you did with family. The fingers were too interlocked, too familiar, too rehearsed. The third photo hit hardest. It was inside the hotel's bar. Victor and Marissa sat in a corner booth lit by a single amber lamp, a bottle of wine, her wine, on the table. Marissa was laughing, leaning forward, her hand on Victor's chest. Victor was gazing at her like she was the last secret in the world. Evelyn stared at that photo longer than the others. Her ears rang, her fingers went numb. She thought about Ryan, her son, Victor's stepson, the boy who had helped repaint the bakery ceiling during her recovery from knee surgery, the boy who called Marissa my angel in his wedding toast, the firefighter who once carried a child out of a burning building without a second thought. What would this do to him? What would it do to them? That night, Evelyn sat on the edge of her bed, laptop open, video queued. Frank had sent one last attachment. She clicked play. It was grainy security footage, possibly taken through a window. Inside the bakery's office, her office, Victor and Marissa were standing close. Too close. Victor reached into the desk drawer, Evelyn's drawer. He pulled out a contract folder, flipped through it, and pointed to something. Marissa leaned over, kissed him on the cheek, then on the mouth. The kiss lingered. Their bodies pressed together in a slow, familiar sway. And then they laughed. Laughed. Like it was all a game. Like she, Evelyn Harper, was just the punchline of a very long, very cruel joke. She closed the laptop softly, stood, and walked to the kitchen. There, beneath the bread box, she kept an old metal tin. Inside were her father's World War II medals, a spare copy of her will, and a notebook with only one name now written on the first page: Victor and Marissa. She clicked her pen. Under the names, she wrote, Targets. The next morning, Evelyn woke before sunrise, not from her alarm, but from something deeper. A heavy awareness that clung to her like smoke. She didn't reach for her phone. Instead, she moved quietly through the house, her nightgown brushing against the wooden floorboards like a whisper. She boiled water for tea, poured it, didn't drink it. Instead, she went to Victor's office. He kept the door locked now, ever since she accidentally rearranged the file drawers looking for the bakery's new supplier invoice. But Evelyn wasn't the kind of woman who lived in the same house with a man for 18 years without learning where he hid his spare keys. She retrieved the small magnetic box from behind the fake brick in the fireplace. The lock clicked open with a metallic groan. Victor's office smelled like stale printer toner and deceit. She stood in the doorway for a moment, taking it all in. The bookshelf that was mostly for show. The drawer that always stuck halfway through opening. The framed certificate on the wall declaring Victor Harper as a certified business strategist, a made-up credential from a made-up online university. Her eyes fell to the desk, the one she had paid for, the one he had claimed as his. She sat down, opened the top drawer. Nothing but pens, receipts, and a hotel-branded notepad. Evelyn flipped through it, page by page. Room 306, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Order the soufflé again. She likes it. Her fingers twitched. She moved on. In the second drawer was a stack of manila folders marked with little colored tabs. Corporate documents, property forms, and then one labeled simply, Expansion Plan Q4. Evelyn opened it. Her bakery's logo, her bakery, was printed at the top of the first page. Underneath, a proposed ownership structure showing Victor and Marissa Chen Harper as senior partners and Evelyn Harper as consultant emeritus, retired, non-voting. Her vision blurred, but she kept reading. There were transfer documents, pending signatures, a draft of a press release announcing the next chapter of Cinnamon Hill, and even a franchise agreement already initialed by Victor and Marissa. It wasn't just adultery. It was theft. Cold, calculated, financial betrayal. The final page was the worst. A medical certification form with her name printed across the top. Evelyn M. Harper. Evaluation request. Cognitive function. Early onset. They were going to fake dementia. Have her declared incompetent. Remove her legally. She stood up too fast. The chair scraped against the floor. She barely made it to the hallway before her legs gave way beneath her. She caught herself against the wall, breathing in ragged, shallow bursts. This wasn't just about love or lust. It was a takeover. And she had taught Marissa everything, from pastry ratios to supplier negotiations. She had trained her like a daughter, trusted her like blood. Now Marissa was coming for the throne, and Victor was her king. That evening, Evelyn met Frank again, this time at a storage unit just outside the city. He had set up a makeshift surveillance hub inside, laptop, headphones, 2 external drives, and a long-lens camera resting on a crate. "You weren't exaggerating," Frank said, eyes glued to the screen. "I bugged the office, got audio today." He slid over a headset. Evelyn hesitated, then put it on. Marissa's voice came through first, low and amused. She still thinks you're working on a distribution contract. It's almost cute. Victor, we'll file the transfer next month. The notary's ready. All we need is her signature on the new tax documents. She's been having those migraines again. We could spin that if needed. Marissa, good, because I've already set up meetings with 3 buyers in LA. They want us to rebrand, drop the cinnamon theme. It's too dated. Victor, that place smells like a grandma's pantry. They want sleek and sexy, not heritage. They both laughed. Evelyn's hand tightened on the chair. Her nails dug into the armrest, but she kept listening. Marissa again. Just make sure she doesn't get suspicious. She signs the papers, we file the rest, and poof, early retirement with a nice little severance. Victor, she won't even know what hit her. Evelyn removed the headphones. Her voice was calm. Can you send me that audio file, Frank? Already did, he said, plus backup copies. You want to go public? Evelyn didn't answer. She stared out through the open garage door at the golden horizon stretching behind the hills. A train horn echoed somewhere in the distance. The sun looked like it was bleeding into the sky. No, she said finally. Not yet. Frank lit a cigarette and blew smoke out the side of his mouth. Then what's next? Evelyn turned, her eyes sharp. I need one more thing from you, she said. What? She reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive and a small black device, a wireless motion sensor. I want eyes inside the bakery, and audio, tomorrow night, after closing. Frank raised an eyebrow. You think they're going to do something? Evelyn's expression didn't change. I'm going to give them the opportunity. She turned to go. Just before she reached the door, she stopped. Oh, and Frank? Yeah? Do you still have that old security smoke rig, the one you said you used during your divorce job in Tahoe? He smirked. Still in the trunk. Good, she said, without turning around. Bring it. The following afternoon, the bakery felt strangely quiet. The usual clatter of trays and the warm thrum of old jazz on the speakers played like a distant memory, as if Evelyn was watching it all through glass. Cinnamon Hill was still hers, but it wouldn't be for long, not if Victor and Marissa's plan worked. She stood behind the counter kneading dough, moving with muscle memory but no joy. Her apron, once a badge of honor, felt like a costume now. At 2 p.m., she posted a sign on the door. Closed for private catering prep, reopen tomorrow. Customers walked away disappointed, but Evelyn didn't care. She needed the bakery empty. By 3:30, Victor texted, "Working late. We'll stay at the office to finalize those franchise files. Don't wait up." Her lip twitched. The lie was so casual now, so smooth. He didn't even bother crafting new ones. Perfect, she thought. At 4, Frank arrived out back with a dusty duffel bag and a tired grunt. Motion sensors good, cameras wired. You sure about the timing? They'll be here by 8, Evelyn said, removing her apron and slipping into a gray cardigan that blended with the shadows of the kitchen. And they'll think I'm halfway to Monterey. The final piece had been set that morning. Over breakfast, she had casually told Victor that she'd been invited to a weekend wellness retreat with her friend Helen. Hot springs, yoga, fresh air. Victor looked up from his coffee like a man being handed a key to a locked door. That's great. You should go. You've been working too hard. Liar. She smiled and kissed him on the cheek. I'll leave this evening. Now, back at the bakery, Evelyn watched Frank install the final piece, a small smoke dispersal canister rigged under the main prep table. It was connected to the motion sensor Evelyn would trigger remotely from her phone. The moment they walked into the kitchen, the smoke would bloom like burnt sugar. Frank grunted in satisfaction. Smoke's non-toxic, just like last time, but thick enough to trigger suspicion, especially if someone's watching. They will be, Evelyn replied. That's the point. At 5 p.m., she left the bakery through the back and walked across the street to Mrs. Langley's house, a small bungalow with peeling lavender shutters and an excellent view of Cinnamon Hill's front door. Beatrice opened the door with her reading glasses still perched on her nose. "Is it time?" Evelyn nodded. "I'm going to need tea and a chair." The older woman led her in. "You'll get both, and probably a scandal." They sat by the bay window. Evelyn set up her phone, connected the audio feed from the bakery, and waited. The sky turned gold, then orange. Time passed slowly, each minute an echo of her own rising heartbeat. At exactly 8:07 p.m., Victor's SUV pulled into the alley beside the bakery. Marissa stepped out wearing a silk-wrapped dress and heels far too high for someone entering a bakery after hours. Beatrice gave a low whistle. "That girl's dressed for something that doesn't involve frosting." Evelyn said nothing. She simply pressed the activate button on her phone. Inside, the recorder blinked to life. Victor opened the front door of the bakery using the emergency key. He didn't even glance around. Marissa followed, her hand brushing the glass as they passed under the sign Evelyn had painted herself 15 years ago. The office camera caught them first. Victor leaned against the desk. "She really went to that retreat?" Marissa smiled and untied her wrap dress slowly. "You doubted me?" He pulled her into a kiss. The microphone buzzed with their voices, low and breathy. Marissa's laugh, high-pitched and false, cut through Evelyn's ears like broken glass. "She'll never see it coming," Marissa whispered. "She thinks you're just expanding into LA. She doesn't know the paperwork's already half-filed." Victor grunted. "After tonight, we'll finish the rest. I just need her signature on the final tax forms. Then she's out. Out of the company. Out of her own kitchen." Marissa purred. "And we'll rename it. No more Cinnamon Hill. We'll call it Velvet Crumb. Modern. Sexy." They kissed again. Then the motion sensor beeped. Evelyn watched through the camera feed as the hidden canister hissed to life under the prep table. Thick gray smoke poured upward in a slow bloom. Marissa was the first to cough. Then Victor swore. "What the shit? Something's burning!" In Beatrice's living room, Evelyn calmly dialed the local emergency dispatch. Not 911, that would raise flags. She used a private number reserved for business security issues. "This is Evelyn Harper. I think there's a fire in my bakery. I'm out of town, but the smoke sensor's triggered. Can you send someone?" The dispatcher promised they'd send the nearest unit. Evelyn already knew who that would be. Across town, her son Ryan was finishing a late-night inspection when the call came in. Fire at Cinnamon Hill. He hit the sirens. 10 minutes later, Ryan kicked open the bakery's front door with 2 men behind him in full gear. Smoke coiled into the night like incense. He moved fast, practiced, toward the kitchen. Then he froze. Victor Harper and Marissa, his father-in-law and his wife, stood naked, coughing, tangled in each other's arms like deer caught in a trap. Their skin was coated in glue. They were stuck, literally fused together, their horror unfolding in real time. "What the hell?" Ryan choked, his helmet sliding off as his body went stiff with disbelief. One of the younger firefighters burst out laughing behind him. Another shouted, "We need medics. They're, stuck. Like, really stuck." Victor shouted, voice cracking, "Ryan, son, this isn't what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. Ryan didn't speak. He turned and walked out the door into the night air, into a storm that wasn't made of smoke, but shame, betrayal, and the death of innocence. From Beatrice's window, Evelyn watched the ambulance lights flash like a twisted Christmas show. She sipped her tea and whispered, "Sweet enough for you, Marissa?" The story broke before sunrise. A blurry photo, Victor and Marissa half covered in emergency blankets, faces twisted in panic and pain, surfaced on a local gossip forum before the ambulance had even cleared the parking lot. By mid-morning, it was everywhere. Social media ate it like cake. Father-in-law and daughter-in-law caught mid-affair in bakery blaze. Award-winning Cinnamon Hill Bakery scorched by scandal. The irony wasn't lost on Evelyn. For decades, she had carefully baked her reputation, slow and golden, layer by layer, never burning the edges. And now, Victor and Marissa had served it up raw, slathered in scandal. But Evelyn didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She sat alone in the bakery's office with the lights off and the blinds closed. The smell of smoke still clung to the walls. The air purifier hummed faintly in the background. She held a copy of the Velvet Crumb rebranding deck, one Frank had retrieved from Victor's briefcase before the ambulance took him away. The first page was slick. Velvet Crumb, a fresh taste for a modern market. Underneath, founders, Victor Harper, Marissa Chen. No Evelyn, not even a thank you. She closed the folder and placed it in the trash. Her phone buzzed, a text from her lawyer. Their attempt to transfer business ownership was fraudulent. Invalid signatures. The contracts are unenforceable. A pause, then, we can sue and win. Evelyn typed slowly. Do it. She stared out the window at the parking lot. No one knew she was back in town yet. Her return had been quiet, unannounced, just the way she wanted it, at least until the court date. The courtroom was packed on the day of the hearing. Victor wore a cheap gray suit and walked with a slight limp, still recovering from the incident. His face had aged 10 years in a week. Marissa sat beside him in oversized sunglasses and a turtleneck, her makeup caked on like armor. Ryan sat behind Evelyn, stone-faced. He hadn't spoken to either of them since that night. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and no time for melodrama, listened quietly as Evelyn's attorney laid out the timeline. Atmospheric trail, fraudulent contracts, thematic voice recordings, fake dementia paperwork, and Flame's finally, the attempted asset transfer, blocked, invalid, and criminal. When Victor tried to speak in his defense, the judge silenced him. Mr. Harper, the evidence speaks clearly. You used your marital relationship as a weapon to sabotage your spouse's business. You plotted a hostile takeover with her daughter-in-law, forged signatures, and violated fiduciary duty. You're lucky this remains a civil suit. Victor looked down. Marissa didn't look up at all. The judgment came fast. Evelyn would retain 100% ownership of Cinnamon Hill. Victor and Marissa were barred from all business involvement permanently. They were fined for fraud, legal fees, and restitution. Any future claim to the business or profits was null and void. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Evelyn walked calmly past them in a black coat and red scarf, the wind catching her silver hair like threads of steel. Ryan walked beside her, silent. "Are you okay, Mom?" he asked quietly as they reached the car. Evelyn looked at him, really looked, and saw the hurt in his eyes. Not just pain, but something deeper. Shame. Guilt. "It wasn't your fault, Ryan," she said. "I should have seen it," he murmured. "No," she said, voice firm. "They made sure you couldn't." He gave a short nod and opened the door for her. As they drove away, Evelyn looked back once. Just once. Victor and Marissa stood on the courthouse steps, alone, ignored by the press, already forgotten by the public. Marissa's mascara ran in thick black rivers down her cheeks. Victor was saying something to her, gesturing wildly. She turned away. Evelyn smiled faintly. Let them turn on each other, she thought. They deserve the silence. A week later, Evelyn retired from daily operations at Cinnamon Hill. She didn't sell, she didn't shut it down, but she appointed a young pastry chef she had mentored, Ava, a single mother from Oakland with fire in her hands and dreams in her eyes. Ava took over with grace and precision. The bakery flourished. Evelyn, meanwhile, moved into the studio apartment above the bakery, a cozy space with a small kitchenette, a reading nook, and a balcony that overlooked the courtyard where she used to watch Ryan play as a boy. She didn't crave noise anymore, or company. Some evenings, she sat outside with a cup of tea and her father's old radio, listening to jazz under the orange glow of the street lamps. One night, a reporter left a voicemail. "Mrs. Harper, we'd love to do a feature on your incredible resilience, from betrayal to redemption, a comeback story." She deleted it. This wasn't a comeback. This was survival. Victor left town within a month. Rumors said he moved to Nevada. Others claimed he was in Oregon, trying to start a consulting business. No one cared. Marissa filed for bankruptcy and divorce. She was last seen applying for a barista job at a competitor's cafe, a place that sold defrosted danishes and called them artisanal. Evelyn never reached out. She never had to. The silence said it all. At the bakery, Ava installed a small bronze plaque behind the register that read, "In honor of Evelyn Harper, founder, fighter, flower queen." Customers touched it for luck. Evelyn never asked for it, but sometimes when no one was watching, she came downstairs, touched it lightly with her fingertips, and smiled. Just once. Then she returned upstairs, where the oven was off, the windows were open, and the cinnamon still lingered. Sweet, but never soft. Fall came quickly in the city. The leaves around Cinnamon Hill turned brittle and red, rustling like secrets down the sidewalk. The mornings grew colder, and Evelyn Harper began her days the same way she had for decades, with a black cup of coffee, a slice of crusty rye toast, and silence. Not emptiness, silence. There was a difference. She no longer woke up thinking about Victor, or Marissa, or the humiliating footage that had played in the private theaters of every neighbor's living room. She no longer replayed Ryan's silence in her mind, wondering if she could have spared him the shock. She had done what she had to do. It wasn't justice. It wasn't revenge. It was survival, sliced and served at room temperature, and she had paid for it in full. Ryan still lived with her, upstairs in the spare room for now. Not out of necessity, but something else. A shared grief, a kind of unspoken truce between mother and son. Bruised, but breathing. He didn't talk much about Marissa. She was officially gone now. Divorced, disgraced, and legally barred from stepping foot near Cinnamon Hill. Once, Evelyn had caught him watching a video of their wedding on his phone. He didn't notice her. She didn't interrupt. He didn't play it again. Instead, he began joining her downstairs early in the mornings. Not in uniform, not as a fireman. Just Ryan, her boy, a man trying to rebuild the muscle of routine. "Do you need help with deliveries today?" he asked one morning while buttoning a thick plaid shirt. Evelyn looked up from her clipboard. "No, but I need someone to take Mrs. Alvarez's coffee order. She's starting to think you're avoiding her." Ryan chuckled. "She asked if I was single. Again." "She asks everyone that," Evelyn said, smiling faintly. "It's not personal." But it was. Everything now felt personal. Every transaction, every glance from a loyal customer. Not out of pity, but something closer to reverence. People respected her now. Not for being betrayed, but for how she carried it, how she never let the flames touch her recipes. She taught baking classes once a week at the community center, not for money, for something else. To teach young women, and a few brave men, the skill of patience, of heat and intuition, of precision that required no praise. Evelyn never mentioned the scandal, but the students whispered about her, called her the lady with the bakery story. Some had seen the photos. Most had watched the dramatized YouTube version, complete with actors and swelling background music. She let them talk, and when they asked for her secret to the perfect cinnamon tart, she always said the same thing. Room temperature eggs, cold hands, and never rush the dough. That goes for people, too. On a Tuesday afternoon, Ava came upstairs with a clipboard in her hand. She looked nervous. "Mrs. Harper?" "Evelyn," she corrected gently. Ava cleared her throat. "I was wondering, the Grand Plaza Hotel wants to feature us in their monthly spotlight. Could we put your name on the brand again, just for the piece?" Evelyn blinked, surprised. "I know you're retired, but," Ava rushed to explain, "you're the story. You built this place. The customers ask about you all the time." Evelyn looked out the window. The bakery's logo still hung above the awning, the same hand-painted sign she made back when she couldn't afford a professional one. She turned back. "Just put, founded by Evelyn Harper. That's enough." Ava beamed. "Yes, ma'am." That night, Evelyn sat on the balcony with a small plate of almond shortbread and a thermos of hot cider. Below her, the bakery's warm lights glowed against the sidewalk like a lighthouse. A young couple walked past, holding hands, laughing. The girl peeked through the window and whispered, "That's the place, the one with the story. You know, the revenge lady." Evelyn smiled, just a little. She thought about how her entire life, her marriage, her betrayal, her survival, had become a story to others, a cautionary tale, a saga, a lesson. But to her it was simpler. She had built something with her own 2 hands. They tried to steal it, they failed. Now she baked less, smiled more, and trusted only what could rise in her own oven. Inside, Ryan had fallen asleep on the couch with a book on his chest, something about fire dynamics. A new recruit at the station had started calling him Chief. He hadn't corrected her. There was peace now. Not the cinematic kind, not tidy, but real. #meta. Sex 0.05. She opened her old recipe journal, leather-bound, faded, stained, and flipped past the tarts, the soufflés, the holiday loaves. On the very last page, she scribbled something new. Flour, eggs, lemon zest, and no second chances. She underlined it once, then closed the book. The oven was off, but it was still warm.